The trail of blood went right to his water well. Tobias Hartwell, who'd spent 37 years on his tough old ranch, knew animal blood from something else. He'd seen plenty of hurt critters. But when he followed those red drops around his barn, what he saw made him stop cold, hand on his rifle. A young native warrior was slumped against the well's stone wall, one hand pressing hard on a big wound in his side, the other reaching weakly for the bucket, hanging just 3 feet above him. The guy was breathing hard, each breath sounding painful, and his dark eyes, though full of hurt, watched Tobias like he expected trouble any second. This was 1847, a time when finding a native on your land meant big problems. Danger that could get you killed in your sleep or your house burned down. Every neighbor for 50 miles would tell Tobias to shoot the guy and bury him deep where no one would find him. Tobias lifted his rifle, finger near the trigger, ready to do the safe thing, the thing everyone expected. But something in those eyes stopped him. It wasn't just pain. It was the same desperate thirst Tobias felt back in '44 when he went 3 days without water and thought he'd die. It was a human need, something that didn't care about skin color, language, or which side of a fight you were on. The native tried to speak, his dry, cracked lips barely making a sound. "Water," he whispered. Tobias lowered his rifle and grabbed the bucket. His neighbors would call him crazy. His brother back east would say the lonely frontier messed with his head. Maybe they were right. But as he knelt by this hurt stranger and held the bucket to his lips, watching him drink like he was saved from drowning, Tobias knew he was changing both their lives forever. What he didn't know was this warrior wasn't just any native, and what happened next would bring more riders to his ranch than he'd ever seen. The guy drank like he hadn't had water in days, 3 whole buckets before his shaky hands could hold it steady. Tobias watched every gulp, his mind racing about what he'd just done. In this place, helping a native was like asking for a death sentence. But as the guy's face got some color back, Tobias saw something chilling. The wound wasn't from an animal or a hunting mishap. It was a bullet hole, fresh, still bleeding. And the angle and burn marks showed someone shot him up close, real recent. That meant whoever did it might still be after him, following the same blood trail to Tobias's ranch. Maybe riding up right now with guns ready and questions Tobias couldn't answer. The native seemed to feel Tobias's fear. With effort, he raised a hand, pointed to the horizon, and made a slicing motion across his throat. Danger was coming, and soon. Tobias's heart pounded. Every part of him wanted to drag this guy away, hide the evidence, pretend this never happened. But the man could barely sit, let alone walk. Moving him might kill him, and leaving him was like putting a target on both of them. Then he heard it, the sound that kept him alive for 12 years out here. Hoofbeats, far off but coming fast. Multiple horses heading straight for his ranch. The native heard it too, his eyes wide with real fear as he tried to push himself up against. The well, like shrinking, might hide him. Blood oozed through his fingers where he pressed his wound. Tobias grabbed the bucket and splashed water over the blood trail to hide it, but there wasn't time to clean it all. The riders would be here in minutes, maybe less. He looked at the wounded warrior, this stranger who turned his life upside down in one afternoon, a guy whose presence could get them both killed. But those dark eyes held something Tobias had never seen in a native before: gratitude, pure and human. The hoofbeats got louder, close enough to count 5 or 6 horses, galloping like they weren't here for a friendly chat. Tobias made a quick choice, knowing it might be his last. He couldn't carry the guy, but he could hide him in the old root cellar behind the barn if they could get there. But as he reached to help the native up, the man grabbed his wrist with surprising strength and shook his head. Then he did something creepy. He smiled, not a thankful smile, but one that said he knew exactly who was coming over that hill. The riders appeared like a storm. 6 men on horseback, dust flying, rifles shining in the sun. Tobias knew the lead rider right away, Marshal Dixon Webb, a guy famous for being brutal, the kind who shot first and didn't bother with questions, especially about natives. He collected scalps like trophies and called it justice, the type. to burn a ranch down if he thought you were hiding someone. Tobias stood in front of the well, blocking the native from view, trying to act like he was just fixing a fence post. His mouth felt dry as sand. Webb pulled up his horse, just 10 feet away, his cold blue eyes sizing Tobias up. The other 5 men spread out, hands on their guns. This wasn't a social visit. "Afternoon, Hartwell," Webb said, his voice slow, like he knew he was in charge. "We're tracking a wounded Indian. Blood trail leads to your place." Tobias felt sweat on his forehead, despite the cool air. "Haven't seen any Indians, Marshal. Been fixing the south fence all day." Webb's eyes scanned the ranch, missing nothing. That's what made him so dangerous. His gaze stopped on the dark stains by the well, and Tobias's stomach sank. "That so?" Webb got off his horse, slow and deliberate. "Because that looks like fresh blood to me. Unless you're butchering cows by your drinking water, I'd say someone's been here." Behind Tobias, hidden by the well, the native stayed still, but Tobias could feel his tension like heat from a fire. One sound, one move, and they were both done for. Webb stepped closer, hand on his pistol. "You know the penalty for hiding Indian fugitives, Hartwell? Same as treason, hanging till you're dead." The words felt like a death sentence. Tobias's body tensed, ready to fight or run, knowing neither would save them. Webb was too close now. Any move would show the native, and then bullets would fly. Then something wild happened. The wounded native spoke, not in English, but in his own language, words like music, clear and strong despite his pain. Marshal Webb froze, his face going pale like he'd seen a ghost. His hand dropped from his pistol, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. When he spoke, it was a whisper. "Dear God, you're him." The other 5 riders got off their horses, their weapons forgotten, faces showing shock and something like fear. Not fear of an enemy, but fear of making a huge mistake. Webb turned to Tobias, pale as snow. "Do you know who you've been helping?" Tobias stared at Webb's scared face, his mind spinning. In 12 years out here, he'd never seen this tough marshal scared not of outlaws, not of wild animals, not even of Apache war parties that burned settlements last summer. But now Webb looked terrified. The native spoke again, this time in perfect English, his voice strong. "Tell him who I am, Marshal. Tell him why you rode so hard to find me." Webb swallowed hard, his voice shaky. "This is Ayana, son of Chief Takakota of the Northern Apache. He's the one who made the peace treaty with Fort Richardson last spring." Tobias felt like the ground moved under him. That treaty stopped 3 years of awful fighting between settlers and Apache, saved hundreds of lives, and made it safe for families to live here without fear of attacks. And he'd been giving water to the guy who made it happen. But if Ayana was a peacemaker, why was he running from the law with a bullet in his side? "There was an ambush," Ayana said, his breathing rough but his voice stronger. 3 days ago, a meeting with Colonel Morrison about making the treaty cover more land. But Morrison had other plans. Webb's face went gray. "Colonel Morrison's dead, shot in the back during an Indian attack 3 days ago. You're wanted for his murder, because that's what they want you to believe," Ayana said, sitting up straighter against the well. "Morrison wasn't killed by Indians. He was killed by men wearing war paint, speaking just enough Apache to trick people, men who knew exactly when and where we'd meet." Tobias felt the truth hit him like a punch. Someone staged Morrison's murder to blame Ayana, someone who wanted the peace treaty gone, who wanted war again. "Who?" Webb asked, but his face said he already guessed. Ayana's eyes turned hard. "The same men selling guns to rogue tribes, making money off this war. The same men who sent you to hunt me instead of the real killers." Webb stepped back, his hand twitching toward his gun before stopping. "You're talking about treason, corruption in the government. And they'll stay accusations until I prove them," Ayana said. "That's why they need me dead before I reach the Apache Council tomorrow, why they shot me and left me to die, why they're counting on you to finish it." Tobias felt dread growing. He thought he was just helping a hurt guy, but he'd stumbled into a plot that could wreck the whole territory. Worse, if Ayana was right, Webb wasn't here to arrest him. He was here to kill him. Silence hung heavy, like a rope about to break. Webb's 5 men shifted in their saddles, hands near their guns, eyes flicking between their marshal and the wounded Apache who just accused the government of murder and treason. Tobias saw the struggle in Webb's eyes. Duty versus truth, orders versus right and wrong. Men like Webb didn't like tough choices. They usually settled them with bullets. Even if you're right, Webb said slowly, I have orders. You're wanted for Morrison's murder. I'm supposed to bring you back, dead or alive. Dead's easier, Ayanna said, calm despite his pain. Dead men can't talk. Dead men can't say who really profits from another Indian war. One of Webb's men, a young deputy named Bradley with nervous eyes, leaned forward. Marshal, if he's telling the truth about the treaty, shut up. Bradley, Webb snapped, but Tobias saw doubt creeping into his face like cracks in a wall. Then Ayanna pulled something from a pouch at his belt, a bloody folded paper. This is why they tried to kill me. A letter from Morrison, written the night before he died. Webb stared at it like it might catch fire. What's it say? It says Morrison found out who's been selling weapons to rogue tribes' names. Dates, amounts, enough to hang a dozen men, Ayanna said, staring at Webb, including proof someone in the marshal's office has been taking bribes to ignore. The words hit Webb like a slap. His face went pale, then green. His men glanced at each other, suddenly studying their horses. Tobias's heart raced. He was watching something that could get them all killed. The moment a corrupt lawman realized he was caught. You're lying, Webb said, but he didn't sound sure. Am I? Ayanna held up the letter. Morrison trusted me with this the night he died. Told me to get it to Fort Richardson if anything happened to him. Called it insurance. Webb stepped forward, gripping his pistol. Give me that letter. So you can't destroy it? Ayanna shook his head. No, Marshal, but I'll make a deal. Let me live to reach the Apache Council tomorrow, and I'll make sure your name stays out of this. The offer hung like smoke after a shot. Tobias saw Webb thinking, weighing his chances, trying to pick the path that'd keep him alive. But then Deputy Bradley got off his horse and walked toward the well, hands up peacefully. Marshal, I've been thinking. Remember that shipment of rifles that went missing 3 months ago? We were told Indians stole it. I saw those same rifles 2 weeks later with settlers heading south. Made me wonder who was really stealing. That cracked something open. Other deputies nodded, sharing looks, remembering things that didn't add up. Tobias realized Ayanna had turned Webb's own men against him without lifting a finger. If you're liking this tale of bravery in the Old West, hit that subscribe button, because what's coming will shake up everything these guys thought about justice. But Webb wasn't the type to give up easy. Cornered men do crazy things. His hand tightened on his pistol, knuckles white. You're all fools, he growled, his calm mask gone. You think this Indian's word means anything against mine? You think anyone will believe a dead Indian and a bunch of traitors? The deputies spread out, hands on their guns. But Tobias saw their doubt years of following orders fighting the growing sense those orders were wrong. Ayanna struggled to his feet, leaning on the well, blood seeping through his fingers, but his voice stayed steady. The truth doesn't care who says it, Marshal. It just is. The truth? Webb spat. The truth is you killed an army officer, and I'm collecting the bounty on your head. He pulled his pistol, aiming at Ayanna, but before he could shoot, Bradley stepped in front, his own gun raised. Stand down, Marshal. The words boomed across the ranch. 4 other deputies followed, pointing guns at their own boss. Only one guy, a rough old deputy named Hawkins, stayed loyal to Webb, looking just as crooked. You're making a mistake. Boys, Webb said, sweat on his face. A mistake that'll cost you your badges, maybe your lives. Maybe, Bradley said, but I've made enough mistakes following you. No more. Tobias watched, heart pounding. 6 armed men on his ranch, guns pointed, all thinking they were right. This was how wars started, how good people died for bad reasons. Then Ayanna did something surprising. He started singing. Not in English, but in Apache, a low, haunting song that felt like it came from the earth. The words spoke of honor, sacrifice, and brothers standing together against evil. It hit everyone hard. The deputies lowered their guns a bit, not understanding the words, but feeling their power. Even Webb seemed caught by the sound. But Tobias realized Ayanna was doing more than singing. He was calling his people. The song was a signal sent on the wind to those who knew how to hear it. The song stopped, and silence fell like a heavy blanket. Then Tobias heard it hoofbeats, faint but getting louder, many horses coming fast. Webb heard them too, his face pale as moonlight. How many? Ayanna smiled through his pain. Enough. The sound grew, like thunder rolling over the plains. Not 6 riders, not even 12, but a whole Apache war party heading for Tobias's ranch, arriving in minutes. Webb raised his pistol again, this time at Tobias's chest. You did this. You helped him signal them. I gave a dying man water, Tobias said, surprised at his own calm. Same as I do for any creature hurting on my land. The hoofbeats were so close you could feel them in the ground. Too many to count. Webb realized what Ayanna had planned. They came over the horizon like something from another world. 50 Apache warriors on horseback, moving together perfectly. War, paint shining in the fading sun. But as they got closer, Tobias saw something shocking. They weren't here to fight. Leading them was an old chief, his presence commanding respect from far off. His gray hair was braided with eagle feathers, and though old, he rode with pride. Behind him were warriors of all ages, from old fighters to young boys, but their weapons stayed sheathed. Webb's face showed confusion, fear, then desperation. His pistol shook as he kept it on Tobias. This changes nothing. I have my orders. Your orders, a new voice said, are no longer valid. Everyone turned to see Deputy Bradley holding up an official paper. This came this morning, Marshal, from the territorial governor. All pursuit of Ayanna is stopped until they investigate Morrison's death. Webb's face turned purple with rage. You lying? Check your dispatch pouch, Bradley cut in. Unless you've been too busy chasing bounties to read your mail. The Apache warriors formed a wide circle around the ranch, not threatening but clearly there. The chief got off his horse and walked to the well where Ayanna waited. His eyes stayed on his son, checking for serious injury. When father and son hugged, the warriors seemed to breathe easier. Tobias felt he was seeing something special, a leader reuniting with his people, a father with his son, a peacemaker with those he swore to protect. The chief spoke to Ayanna in fast Apache, his hands checking the wound, his face worried. Ayanna answered, mixing in some English. Tobias caught words about the truth, a conspiracy, and the real killers' names. When they finished, the chief turned to Webb, his eyes like sharp stones. His English was clear and perfect. Marshal Webb, my son says you came to murder him. Webb's pistol shook. I came to arrest a fugitive from your own corruption, the chief said. A man whose only crime was finding out how you and your friends profit from war between our peoples. The words hung heavy. Webb's last loyal man, Hawkins, was backing his horse away, clearly thinking of running. You have no proof, Webb said, his voice breaking. The chief smiled, not kindly, but like he held all the cards. We have Morrison's letter, the confessions of the real killers who died trying to escape us, and something else. He nodded to a warrior who brought a leather bag and pulled out papers that made Webb's face go pale. Your letters with the gunrunners, the chief said. Every payment, every shipment, every lie you told to hide it. Morrison was smarter than you thought. Webb's world fell apart. Tobias watched a corrupt man see his schemes, violence, and betrayals crash down. The evidence was clear, the witnesses solid, the justice coming. But cornered men are unpredictable. Webb swung his pistol toward the chief, desperation taking over. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. Things moved fast. Ayanna threw himself between the gun and his father, despite his wound. The pistol fired, and 50 warriors reached for their weapons. But the shot missed because Tobias, a simple rancher who just wanted to help a thirsty man, tackled Webb, sending them both to the ground in a cloud of dust and anger. The dust cleared like a curtain dropping. Webb lay still under Tobias, his pistol thrown clear. Bradley and his men quickly grabbed Webb and Hawkins, while the Apache warriors lowered their weapons. But what happened next stuck with Tobias forever. The chief walked to where Tobias sat in the dirt, catching his breath. The old man's face showed no emotion as he studied this rancher who risked everything for a stranger. Then, suddenly, he put both hands on Tobias's shoulders and spoke in Apache, words heavy with ceremony, honor, and respect. Ayana translated, his voice full of feeling. He says you're now a brother to our people. What you did today showing kindness to an enemy, risking your life for truth, choosing courage over fear, these are the actions of a true warrior. Tobias felt something change inside, like a door opening to new light. All his life, he'd been told natives were enemies, savages, barriers to progress. But looking into the chief's wise eyes, he saw only dignity and a respect he'd never gotten from his own people. The ceremony that followed was like nothing Tobias had seen. The warriors got off their horses and formed a circle around him. One by one, they touched his hand, not a regular handshake, but something deeper, a sign of family that went beyond skin or culture. When the last warrior finished, the chief gave Tobias a gift that took his breath away, a war lance with eagle feathers and intricate beads, its handle worn smooth by generations. This was my grandfather's, the chief said, and his grandfathers before him. It's never been carried by anyone not Apache until today. As the sun set, painting the sky gold and red, the Apache got ready to leave. Ayana's wound was treated by their medicine man, and though weak, he'd lived to expand the peace treaty and bring the real criminals to justice. Before getting on his horse, Ayana clasped Tobias's hand. You saved more than my life today, brother. You saved the peace between our peoples. I just gave a thirsty man water, Tobias said. Ayana smiled. Sometimes, that's how the world changes, one cup of water at a time. Exactly 24 hours later, they were gone. But they left something amazing proof that in a world full of hate and fear, simple kindness could do miracles. Webb and Hawkins were tried and convicted of treason, corruption, and planning murder. The gun running was stopped, and the peace treaty grew to include all the territory's tribes. Tobias Hartwell, a simple rancher who helped a stranger, became the first white man in the territory's history to be adopted into the Apache Nation. Because sometimes, in the harsh old West, the biggest battles weren't won with guns or violence, but with something stronger, the courage to see enemies as people, and the wisdom to choose kindness over fear. Now click the video on the screen for a story even wilder than this one, with a twist so big you won't forget it anytime soon. Click the video